The air hung heavy and still, thick with the scent of dust and forgotten things. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the grime-coated windows of the thrift store, casting long, eerie shadows across the cluttered aisles. I wandered through, my gaze skimming over chipped china dolls and faded board games. Then, I saw her. She sat perched upon a shelf, nestled between a chipped teapot and a dusty stack of books. Her porcelain face, frozen in a disconcertingly cherubic smile, seemed to draw me in. Her eyes, two blue glass beads, glinted with an unnatural life. An inexplicable urge to possess her washed over me. Ignoring the voice of reason, I reached out and lifted her into my arms. Her painted porcelain skin was surprisingly cold beneath my touch, sending a shiver down my spine. Cradling the doll close, I made my way to the counter, her vacant gaze seeming to follow my every move. Lily, my 6-year-old daughter, squealed with delight when she saw the doll. Her eyes, wide with wonder, mirrored the same unsettling gleam I had seen in the doll's glass eyes. She snatched the doll from my hands, her small fingers tracing the contours of its porcelain face. "She's beautiful, Mommy," she breathed, her voice filled with awe. "Can I call her Emily?" I swallowed the unease that rose in my throat, forcing a smile. "Of course, darling," I said, ruffling her hair. "Emily it is." For days, Emily became Lily's constant companion. They were inseparable. Lily took her everywhere. To the park, to the dinner table, even to bed. The doll, propped up on the pillow beside her, seemed to watch over Lily with those unnervingly lifelike eyes. I tried to shake off the feeling of being observed, of another presence settling into the corners of our home. The first sign that something was amiss came in the dead of night. I woke with a start, my heart pounding in my chest. A soft whisper, barely audible, seemed to linger in the air. I strained to listen, my breath caught in my throat. The whisper came again, this time a little clearer, a child's voice, high-pitched and filled with an unnatural glee. I crept down the hallway, my bare feet silent on the cold hardwood floor. The whispering grew louder as I approached Lily's room. Pushing open the door, I peered into the darkness. Lily lay fast asleep, her chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. Emily sat perched on the nightstand, her painted smile a grotesque mockery in the shadows. Convinced it was just my imagination, I tucked Lily's blanket tighter around her and retreated to my own room. The whispering had stopped, but the silence that followed was somehow more unnerving. The next morning I tried to dismiss the events of the night as a bad dream, a trick of the mind. Yet the unsettling feeling persisted, fueled by a growing sense of unease that seemed to permeate the house. Even Midnight, our usually aloof black cat, seemed affected. He would sit outside Lily's bedroom door, his back arched, hissing at something unseen. His emerald eyes, usually bright and curious, were now narrowed, fixed on Emily with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. One evening, as Lily played with Emily in the living room, Midnight's agitation reached a fever pitch. He launched himself at the doll, a blur of black fur and razor-sharp claws. Lily screamed, scooping Emily into her arms just in time. "Midnight, no!" I scolded, scooping him up and carrying him out of the room. That night, I locked Midnight in the basement, his mournful cries adding to the growing sense of dread that had become a constant companion. Lily's usually sunny disposition began to darken. She grew withdrawn, her laughter replaced by a nervous silence. She started having nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night screaming, her small body racked with sobs. "Emily is angry with me," she cried one night, clutching me tight, her little body trembling. "She says I don't play with her enough." I tried to reassure her, to explain that dolls couldn't be angry, that it was just a bad dream. But even as I spoke, a part of me couldn't shake the chilling feeling that Lily wasn't just imagining things. The whispers continued, growing bolder, more insistent. She became possessive of Emily, refusing to let the doll out of her sight. It was as if Emily was exerting a sinister influence over my daughter, slowly twisting her innocence into something dark and unsettling. I couldn't ignore the growing unease any longer. The whispers, the nightmares, Lily's disturbing change in behavior all pointed to the doll. I tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence, but deep down, I knew the truth. Emily was not what she seemed. She was a vessel of something ancient and evil, something that had latched onto my innocent daughter. One afternoon while Lily was at school, I decided to examine the doll more closely. I held my breath, steeling myself as I reached for Emily. Her porcelain skin was ice cold, even through the fabric of her dress. I turned her over in my hands, searching for any markings, any clue to her origins. That's when I noticed it. A small, barely perceptible inscription etched into the back of the doll's neck. I held the doll closer, my heart pounding as I made out the inscription, "Beware the doll that knows." The inscription on the doll's neck confirmed my worst fears. Emily was not just a harmless toy, but a conduit for something sinister. I had to get rid of it, to protect Lily from its insidious influence. That night, I waited until Lily was sound asleep, then I crept into her room, my heart hammering in my chest. I reached for Emily, but as my fingers brushed against the doll's cold porcelain skin, I felt a jolt of static electricity shoot up my arm. The doll's head turned, its glassy blue eyes fixing on me with an unnerving intensity. Fear, primal and consuming, washed over me. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a scream. The doll was alive. I watched in horror as the doll slowly rose from the bed, its limbs moving with an unnatural fluidity. Frozen in place, my breath caught in my throat, I watched as the doll, now hovering in midair, turned its malevolent gaze toward Lily. A low growl, guttural and menacing, emanated from its porcelain lips. Lily stirred in her sleep, a whimper escaping her lips. With a speed that defied its inanimate form, the doll shot across the room, landing on Lily's chest. Lily's eyes flew open, wide with terror, as the doll's cold porcelain hands reached for her throat. I lunged forward, screaming, but the doll was too quick. It tightened its grip, its glassy blue eyes boring into Lily's, and a chilling silence descended upon the room. Lily's struggles ceased. The doll, perched upon her chest like a grotesque puppet master, began to move Lily's limbs, forcing her to sit up in bed. "Mommy," Lily's voice, distorted and chilling, echoed through the room. "Don't you want to play with us?" Her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her vacant eyes staring past me, fixated on something only she could see. The air grew heavy, thick with a malevolence that pressed down on me, stealing my breath. "Let her go!" I screamed, my voice raw with terror. The doll, still controlling Lily's lifeless form, turned its head towards me, a cruel smile spreading across its porcelain face. "You can't escape me." Lily's voice, now a chilling whisper, sent shivers down my spine. "She's mine now." Desperation clawed at me, fueling a surge of adrenaline. I couldn't let this thing take my daughter. I had to fight for Lily's soul, for our lives. Remembering the inscription on the doll's neck, a spark of hope ignited within me. The doll, still perched on Lily's chest, tilted its head, as if considering my question. Lily's lips curled into a grotesque smile, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too pointed for a child her age. "It means," Lily's voice, now a chilling rasp, sent shivers down my spine. "That knowledge is power, and I know your deepest fears." The room seemed to warp around me, the air thick with a suffocating dread. Images flashed before my eyes, my worst fears, my deepest regrets, all manipulated, twisted into grotesque spectacles by the entity that now controlled my daughter. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting against the wave of terror that threatened to consume me. "You can't win!" I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. "I won't let you have her." Remembering the cat's reaction to Emily, a desperate plan began to form in my mind. "You think you're so strong?" I spat, my voice laced with a defiance I barely felt. "But you're nothing but a parasite, feeding off a child's innocence." I saw a flicker of anger in the doll's painted eyes, a momentary lapse in its control. That was my chance. I lunged for Lily, scooping her up in my arms, and raced out of the room. I could hear the doll's enraged screams echoing behind me, its voice laced with a fury that sent chills down my spine. I ran to the basement door, fumbling with the lock, my heart pounding against my ribs. I threw open the door and released Midnight, his emerald eyes widening in surprise before fixing on the figure that emerged from the shadows. The doll, hovering in midair, its porcelain face contorted in a mask of rage, launched itself at me. But before it could reach us, Midnight pounced, a blur of black fur and razor-sharp claws. A piercing shriek echoed through the house, followed by an eerie silence. I stood there, my breath ragged, my arms wrapped tightly around Midnight, as the silence stretched on. The doll was gone. Lily, still unconscious, lay limp in my arms, her breathing shallow but steady. We were safe for now.